John retired on a Friday. There was a chocolate cake in the break room, a card everyone signed, and a quiet drive home where, for the first time in 40 years, he had nowhere he needed to be on Monday. And he had done it right. Around $500,000 saved. House paid off. No wild debt. By every measure he'd ever been handed, he had made it. The first year felt like the reward he'd pictured. Then somewhere in year 2, John noticed something that didn't sit right. The account was going down faster than the plan said it should. Not off a cliff, just faster. And here's the part that actually bothered him. He couldn't point to why. There was no medical disaster, no market crash, no boat, no sports car, no Vegas weekend. Nothing he could hold up and say, "There, that's the thing that did it." And yet, the number kept sliding. That's the strange truth about a $500,000 retirement. It almost never gets broken by one big mistake. It gets worn down by a handful of completely ordinary expenses that keep running quietly long after the paycheck that used to cover them has stopped. They seem harmless on their own, which is exactly what makes them so easy to miss. So today, we're going to find John's missing money. We're counting down 6 expenses that can quietly outlast a $500,000 retirement, from the one you'd spot a mile away all the way down to number 1, the expense that does the most damage and is the reason people like John never notice the other 5. Number 1 ties the whole thing together, so stay with me to the end. And by the end, you'll see why noticing these things isn't you being cheap, but rather it's you being sharp. Let's start with number 6, the most obvious one, the one John actually could see, the car. Specifically, the car that always seems to have a payment attached to it. Here's why it's so easy to keep doing. A car payment is just part of adult life. You've had one for most of your working years. It's automatic, it's normal, and a new car feels like a fair reward after decades of showing up. Nobody looks at you funny for financing a car. John had rolled one loan into the next since he was 25 and never thought twice. But look at what that payment actually is right now. As of early 2026, the average new car payment in America hit a record $770 a month. Used isn't cheap either, around $531, and that's only the loan. Add insurance, gas, and upkeep, and owning a new vehicle runs north of $11,000 a year every single year. A $770 car payment is basically a second grocery budget with tires. And here's what makes it an outlast expense. It isn't one car, it's the habit of always having a car payment. You pay one off, and 18 months later, there's another, because that's the rhythm you know. That rhythm is fine while a paycheck keeps refilling the account. It lands a lot heavier when it's coming straight out of a nest egg that has to last you 30 years. The move a lot of people make is simple. Keep the car you've got longer. A reliable, paid-off car you drive 3 or 4 extra years might be the single biggest expense you ever quietly delete from your retirement. So the thing worth asking isn't whether you can afford the payment, because this month you probably can. It's whether this is the version of retirement where a car payment gets to ride along the whole way. Number 5 is still something you can see, but it hides a little better. Convenience spending. Mostly food. Takeout, delivery, the drive-thru, the daily coffee. But really, it's anything you buy to skip a small chore. I want to be careful here because this isn't about guilt. You've earned a dinner out. The reason convenience spending sneaks up on retirees specifically is that retirement hands you something you never had before: time, and a lot of it. Days that used to be shaped by work are suddenly wide open, and open days are exactly when it's easiest to think, let's just order something. For John, it was lunch out most days, because what else was the afternoon for? The problem was never any single meal, it's the frequency. Fast food used to be the cheap option. Now it's a $17 paper bag with fries, 2 delivery dinners a week at, say, $35 each after fees and tip is about $70 a week. That's a little over $3,600 a year. Add a $6 coffee most mornings, and you're pushing past $5,000 a year on convenience you'll barely remember buying. Over a 10-year stretch, that's more than $50,000 gone to the fact that cooking felt like a hassle on a given evening. That's not a discipline problem. That's a habit that made sense when a paycheck was refilling the account behind you. Once the paycheck stops, the habit is still there. The paycheck isn't. The goal isn't to stop eating out, it's to make eating out a choice instead of something you do automatically. Spend money on the meals you actually look forward to, especially the ones that are about enjoying time with other people. Cut back on the orders that are only about avoiding the kitchen. By the third takeout order of the week, it may be worth asking whether it still feels like a treat or whether it has simply become part of the routine. Now the list starts to hide. Number 4 is where John's mystery really lived. Subscriptions, all of them. Streaming, apps, the gym he joined in January and stopped visiting by March, the cloud storage, the thing he signed up for on a free trial 2 years ago and never opened again. These are easy to buy because each one is small and each one is automatic. $9 here, $15 there. Nothing you'd ever sit down and agonize over. They land on the card by themselves on different days, so they never add up in your head. Except they do add up. When researchers ask people to guess their monthly subscription spending, the average guess is about $86. When those same people actually itemize every charge, the real number comes out around $219 a month. That's roughly $133 more than they thought running quietly in the background. And a big share of folks admit they're still paying for at least one thing they completely forgot they had. Do the math on that over a retirement. $219 a month is about $2,600 a year. Over a 25-year retirement, that's around $65,000, and that assumes prices never rise, which they always do. $65,000 out of a $500,000 nest egg on subscriptions, a good chunk of which nobody's even using. Subscriptions are remarkably loyal. You can forget they exist for 3 years, and they will still remember your credit card number every month. That's the trap with small automatic charges. They don't feel like spending because you never actually decide to spend them. The money just leaves on its own. But your retirement doesn't care that the charge was small. It only sees money going out every month for the rest of your life. When John finally sat down and read his statement line by line, this is the category where he actually said the words out loud. I forgot I was even paying for that. The fix is almost embarrassingly easy, which is the good news. Once a year, read every recurring charge out loud. Keep the ones you'd gladly buy again today. Cancel the rest. You can't really be deprived of something you forgot you had. For each one, the question is just whether it still improves your life or whether it's following you into retirement because nobody told it to leave. Here's the one most people never see coming. Number 3 is the house. Even a paid-off house. Paying off the mortgage used to mean the house was basically done costing you. Not anymore. You spend decades dreaming about the day the bank finally goes away, and that day is real and worth celebrating. But here's what almost nobody frames clearly. Paying off the mortgage doesn't end the cost of the house. It just closes one line of it. The house keeps billing you whether or not you owe the bank a dime. Property taxes, which tend to go up, not down. Homeowners insurance, which has been climbing hard across a lot of the country. And maintenance, the roof, the water heater, the furnace, the 1,000 small repairs a house quietly demands. A common rule of thumb puts upkeep alone at around 1% of the home's value a year. On a $400,000 house, that's roughly $4,000 before taxes and insurance even show up. Stack those together, and it's completely normal for a paid-off home to still cost $10,000 to $15,000 a year just to own and keep standing. And yes, taxes and insurance swing a lot depending on where you live. The mortgage may be retired, but the water heater has made no such commitment. John's house was paid off, and it still quietly asked for around $1,000 a month before he'd bought a single thing to put in it. This one outlasts nearly everything because you will always live somewhere, and somewhere always costs money. I'm not saying you should sell your home. For a lot of people, staying put is the right call, and the emotional value is real. But it helps to know the true yearly number before you assume the house is free now that the loan's gone. Some people run that math and decide to downsize or move somewhere with lower taxes and upkeep and free up real breathing room. Others look at it and happily keep the house, but now they're planning around the actual cost instead of a fantasy of zero. Either way, the honest thing to know is what this house truly costs you every month now that the mortgage is gone. Number 2 barely feels like spending at all, which is exactly why it sits this high. It's helping the adult kids. The cell phone plan they're still on, the car insurance you never took them off of, the rent you covered just this once that quietly became every month, the wedding, the down payment, the emergency that turns into a pattern. You do it because you're a parent, and helping your children is one of the deepest instincts there is. No lecture is going to change that, and honestly, it shouldn't. John has 2 grown kids, and the money that flowed their way never once felt like a line item. It felt like being a dad. But this one deserves clear eyes precisely because the emotion is so strong. Money that goes to your kids after you've retired isn't coming out of a paycheck anymore. It's coming straight out of the savings that has to last you the rest of your life. And unlike a subscription, this expense usually grows instead of shrinking because needs are real and love doesn't come with a budget cap. Here's the part that's easy to miss in the moment. The most valuable thing you can hand your children isn't a few $100s a month right now. It's not becoming their financial emergency in 20 years. A parent who quietly drains their own retirement helping the kids often ends up needing help from those same kids later, which is the exact outcome everyone was trying to avoid. So this isn't about cutting family off. It's about helping from a set number instead of an open faucet. A lot of people decide what they can give without threatening their own retirement. They're honest with their kids about where that line is, and they help within it. Generosity with a boundary is still generosity. The hard but fair question underneath it is whether the help is letting your kids stand on their own or slowly turning their expense into your risk. And that brings us to number 1, the expense that does the most damage, and the one quietly sitting underneath several of the others. Number 1 is the money you spend to still feel like the person you were when you had a paycheck. This is the one John never saw because it never showed up as a bill. Think about what a career gives you besides income, status, identity, the quiet confidence of being someone who's doing fine. When the paycheck stops, that feeling doesn't switch off with it. The paycheck may be gone, but apparently it forgot to tell your spending personality. There's a very human pull to keep proving, mostly to yourself, that you're still that guy, so the newer car stays in the driveway. The house stays a little bigger than you need. You reach for the check at dinner. You keep buying at the level you bought at when you were earning, because dropping down feels like admitting something. Here's why it's number 1. Go back over John's whole list. The car he kept financing out of habit, the house he never questioned, the lunches out because a retired man shouldn't have to pack a sandwich, the help to the kids that proved he was still the provider. Almost none of that was really about cars or houses or food. It was about identity. It was about not feeling like retirement had made him smaller, and that's completely understandable. But identity spending is the most expensive habit on this entire list because it never shows up as one charge you can point to. It shows up as the reason you never questioned the other 5. And here's the quiet irony, the one that surprised John most. The retirees who actually stay comfortable, the ones who never seem to sweat a repair bill or a rough market year, usually aren't the ones who spent the most to look retired. They're the ones who let go of proving it. They stopped funding an image and started funding an actual life. Same $500,000, completely different decade. There's no math trick for this last one. The move is just honesty. And maybe the most important question on the whole list is whether a purchase is actually making your life better or just proving you can still afford the life you used to have. So, there's John's missing money. Not a disaster, not a single bad decision. 6 ordinary expenses. Counted down. Number 6, the car that always has a payment. Number 5, the convenience that became a default. Number 4, the subscriptions running in the background. Number 3, the paid-off house that still bills you. Number 2, the help that turned into a habit. And number 1, the spending that was really about identity all along. Notice what none of these are. None of them are reckless. John wasn't gambling or blowing money. These were normal, reasonable, even loving expenses. That's exactly what made them dangerous. They didn't look like the problem. They just kept running quietly, long after the paycheck that used to cover them clocked out for good. The good news is that seeing them is most of the battle. You can't plug a leak you can't see. Once these 6 are on the table, you get to decide which ones still earn their place in your retirement and which ones you'd rather show the door while you've still got plenty of time to do it. If you want more retirement breakdowns like this, the kind that help you catch the quiet money problems early before they turn into retirement surprises, subscribe to Benji Knows Money. That's the whole point of this channel. And if John's story left you wondering what a $500,000 retirement actually looks like once you sit down and put honest numbers to it, not the scary version and not the fantasy version, the real one, that's exactly where we're headed next.